agree that the number of foreigners who come to Lviv is constantly growing, and they stay here for quite a while or even for good. Each of them has their reason to stay. For instance, it could be some business matter or other personal reasons. There is no doubt Lviv is becoming more investment attractive. Well-known companies open their offices here. A lot of international conferences and meetings often take place in our city, and tourists are lured into Lviv by its architecture and festivals. Today, we, attorneys at law BK Partners, are pleased to welcome our long-standing client, Brody McKee, who has arrived to Ukraine from Australia. In Lviv, Brody is lead software engineer at IT company Tech Magic, right? Hi, Brody. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
I think everyone would like to know, why do foreigners choose Ukraine? What kind of difficulties do they face in Ukraine? And I would be very grateful if you help us answer these questions.
Okay. So first, I think a lot of foreigners are just very interested in visiting a place like Ukraine because it's Europe. So it's, especially Lviv, it's still a very beautiful European city, but also culturally more different than a lot of other European countries. The UK, Germany, those sorts of countries are far closer to home. So it's somewhat of an adventure because it's something new and different. On top of that, obviously, Ukraine has great food, lots of interesting, beautiful places to see, really nice nature. And I think for Western tourists, it's also quite affordable. As someone who moved here, I personally moved to Ukraine. Yeah, I think mostly for the adventure, trying something very different, learning a new language. Being in an environment that was far more different than what I'm used to. Yeah.
And how long have you been in Ukraine?
So I've been in Ukraine now since May of 2017, so about a year and a half.
Brody, can you recall your first impression of Ukraine in general and Lviv in particular?
So my first impression of Ukraine was that it was both very similar to home in some ways and very different in other ways. So immediately you can see architecture and the way people are talking and interacting with each other is very different. But then you see at the same time brands and foods and things like that you're, McDonald's and things like that you know from home. So it's both familiar and different. Culturally, I think like a lot of Westerners, I found it a little bit hard initially to understand that you shouldn't walk around smiling at everybody in the street because it can be seen as something an insane person would do. But then you also quickly learn that when someone doesn't smile at you, it doesn't mean they don't like you. It's just not a normal thing to do. I think also, little things can be challenging sometimes. It's not cultural here to hand someone cash when you're buying something. You should put it down on the table. Whereas in my country, that would be considered rude. So those sorts of things can be a little bit challenging to begin with, but then you just get used to them. And then on the other side, there are some really great things here. I think it's fun for me to watch how families interact in Ukraine. Families are a lot closer than they are in our culture. Sometimes my colleagues will get calls from their mothers during the day at work, which is a very foreign idea for me. I also really enjoy the difference in food and drink here.
Actually, we can say that Ukraine is your second home now, right?
Yeah.
And what do you like the most about Ukraine?
Yeah, so I personally, I love the food. I really there's some really good food here. I love the culture of Ukraine and particularly Lviv. I think Lviv has a lot of really beautiful, interesting buildings to see and great events on all the time. And it's a city where you just always feel like there's something to do and something to see. And Ukraine as a country is exciting because it's growing quickly economically in terms of IT sector. So for me, it's really cool to see. There are a lot of IT companies popping up, a lot of really interesting things happening here. There are a lot of really interesting people in that atmosphere as well. People who are really passionate about their work and really want to change the industry and in a way change the country.
Sometimes in Ukraine it takes a while to overcome all bureaucratic obstacles in order to get some certificates or permits. And how does it look like in your country, in your native country?
Yeah, so there is a lot more bureaucracy here. And it's a lot more challenging here because in Australia, things are very well documented and in English, so I can read them obviously as well. But it's a little bit easier to find the information you need. It's a little bit easier to get the help you need, and I think the government is generally quite helpful to businesses in terms of trying to lay things out and make sure that people understand what they should do. I think in Ukraine this stuff is a little bit harder to find, which is, I think, why it's important to get legal advice on these sorts of things, because it's really hard to work this stuff out for yourself. Even if you speak Ukrainian, I think it's a challenge to understand what you can and can't do in terms of permits and things.
In your opinion, what should be changed in the first place?
For me, in terms of like permits and business and this sort of stuff, I think I would like to see Ukraine doing more to help small businesses. Maybe the government could invest more money into building websites and services that are there to provide information and help people jump over these hurdles. So instead of people, having to try and read through legislation, they have someone they can go and ask, or some government advisors who can kind of say to them like, hey, look, this organization here is here to help small businesses grow and prosper and to get through all this red tape. And I think that would really help. Because, from my experience, a lot of businesses in Ukraine suffer from this.
What piece of advice would you like to give to foreigners who come to reside in Ukraine on permanent basis?
Yeah, so I think first, if they've never been to Ukraine before or never been to a country in the sort of former Soviet Union as well, I think there are some cultural things that they need to be aware of. Like I said, sometimes some things might seem kind of challenging to begin with, but mostly you'll get used to it pretty quickly. Most of the things that first strike you as shocking, like that people maybe don't seem like they're as friendly when you walk past them in the street, you quickly understand that it's not necessarily that way at all. So I think, don't judge a book by its cover, or as we would say in English, and give yourself some time to understand what's actually happening and understand the culture. I think learning some Ukrainian is really important. I have been studying Ukrainian for a while now. I'm not very good at studying Ukrainian because I'm very busy with work often, but I take classes and it helps a lot. Even just knowing how to say numbers and foods and stuff is very useful because in the center it's not hard to find English-speaking people, but outside of the center of big cities, you'll run into a lot more people who don't speak English. So that's something you should definitely focus on if you're a foreigner coming to Ukraine.
And finally, why did you choose our firm?
Yeah, so I looked around. I got some advice from some friends and colleagues, and I also read reviews online as well. And this firm came out very strong across everyone and everything that I saw.
Will you recommend us to your friend?
Yeah, definitely. I actually already have recommended a few.
Really?
Yes, I have. Definitely, I would recommend to my friends. Yes.
Thank you, Brody, for the conversation, for trust. It's a big pleasure to work with you.
It's been really helpful to work with you as well. I couldn't have done any of this without your help.
Thank you.